Let's move on to a big topic, and that's Khabib missing weight. And, man, as a matter of fact, I don't know if you remember one of our last shows, or it might have been our last show last week. The last thing you said, we were talking about betting, and you said, is somebody going to miss weight? And I said, yeah, but I didn't think it was going to be the main card. Now, I've heard you and Gil talk about this. Randy Couture, he texted me and was like, God, I can't believe, why did Khabib miss weight? Well, Khabib missed weight for the exact same reason 99% of the people that have ever missed weight in their life. He broke. Yeah, man, that you cut a ton of weight. You cut a ton of weight, and you're in absolute misery. So I read his manager, Ali, came to the room about 3:30 in the morning, and Khabib's dying. Well, it looks like he's dying because that's what it feels like, right?
Sure.
I mean, when you're, what's the worst cut you ever had?
Yeah, well, let's put it this way. The most weight I ever cut, I had to lose 17 pounds in 22 hours. However, the most painful cut I ever had, I lose 12 pounds in 4 hours. But yeah, so listen, here's the way this works. For people that don't understand, and I do not want to be part of the let's pile on Khabib. I don't believe in kicking a guy when he's down. The reality is very bad for Khabib. This was an opportunity missed. The disclosed pay came out. He had a bout agreement for $500,000, $500,000 just to make weight and walk to that ring regardless of the outcome. And it was stated that whoever won that fight was going to be fighting Conor, which is a seven-figure payday, opportunity, exposure, media, just all the fireworks that comes with that. So he lost out on everything. We don't need to pile on him. There's a side to this where you go, hey, what exactly happened here? Because it wasn't a short notice fight. This fight, we've been talking about it on this show for well over 8 weeks and closer to 3 months. He knew about the fight. He's missed weight before. He says this is his weight class. We've got to take him at his word. And, I like the precautions that were made. If Ali walks into his room and says, hey, we've got a problem here, instead of looking at that payday, because don't forget how it works for Ali. He gets 10% of whatever Khabib brings in. That's a $50,000 payday for Ali. And he did the right thing. He looked out for his guy, and they took whatever medical steps they needed to do. Let's just accept that because that's where we're at. It is hard to imagine what happened, though, because what do you do with him now? They would still love to have Khabib. Don't forget the politics of this. They go over, they get a Russian TV deal. 48 hours later, Dana White announces the winner of Ferguson and Khabib is going to fight Conor. He didn't then bring up the Russian TV deal, but it doesn't take a lot to figure out that Khabib, being the favorite, who people thought was going to win, if he does, he advances to Conor, and that's going to be on the debut of this new network TV deal. All of that stuff is gone. What do you do with Khabib? When a guy misses weight, a lot of times in the past, you move him up a weight class. Kelvin Gastelum missed weight, boom, he had to go fight at 185. Now he's fighting Vitor again this Saturday at 185. Does that mean you can never move him back to 170? No. We saw Johnny Hendricks get, opportunities again and again, and he missed it again and again before they finally moved up. So what do you do with Khabib? Because if you were to tell me he's a 170-pounder, I'm not sure he is. He doesn't quite have the height for it. He's never fought at that weight class. His size does matter, particularly with his game and getting that top control and keeping that pressure and keeping guys pinned down. A lot of that is, most of that is his skill, but there is a large part to do with how big he is when he gets into the ring.
Listen, Khabib made weight just a minute ago, okay? And what happened, I guarantee this is what happened. There's a new way to cut weight now. And you've bought onto this 5 years ago or 6 years ago with this water loading, and you bring your weight up, and then the sodium and this, that, and the other. You've got guys coming to fight week 22, 23 pounds overweight. Well, it's right there. They're going to suck all this weight. What happened is, I guarantee this is what happened, is he got cut short. Okay, somewhere along that line, whether he was supposed to be 22 pounds or 21 or 19, he was 23. And it kept getting worse and worse and worse, and it never gained any steam. Listen, I'm never going to believe it. I'm never going to believe a 55-pounder should come into fight week weighing 77. That doesn't make any sense to me. A 55-pounder should come into fight week 15 to 17 over tops, something that you can grab in the course of 48 hours and make weight. So what happened was he pushed the needle a little bit. Last time he made weight, yeah, he had an extra pound, but he was like, okay, I can get away with this. I can cut it all. It's false security. It's false security. I haven't seen the performances increase with this water load BS this entire time it's been going on. Find me a guy cutting weight in the sauna and show me he's not performing at just as good as the guy water loading to hell and gone.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, so I think we differ on opinions there. Look, I think if a guy is in a sauna to dehydrate, he doesn't know how to cut weight. I think if a guy puts on plastics, the old school way that you and I and all of our peers did in the wrestling world, if he's putting on plastic, he doesn't know how to cut weight. There are new ways to do it. I was just exposed to them. Mike Dolce largely brought it into our industry, but there are ways to get that weight off that are a lot more pleasant and where you don't need to sit in one of these boxes. But I'll talk about this, Joel, because you are spot on when you bring up the fact that he's got markers. At 30 days out, a professional who's cutting weight and who's been down this path, at 30 days out, he knows exactly what he should weigh. At 21 days out, he knows exactly what he needs to weigh. At 10 days out, at 12 days out, and at 48 hours out. Somewhere he was off the mark. Somewhere it was just too much. Time got him, whether it wasn't a discipline or he slipped in a couple of too many meals, or it was a sodium issue, or he wasn't working hard enough. It's really hard for me to believe any of those are true with Khabib Nurmagomedov, who's an ultimate disciplined athlete. But not making weight is a sign of a lack of discipline. It always stunned me when Johnny Hendricks missed weight, a lifelong wrestler who, since he was 9 years old, to compete, had to beat the scale. Had to beat the scale before he even had a shot to beat the opponent. And then all of a sudden, later in life, he started missing it. But it is a reality. Even Olympic hero Rulon Gardner, who's in the heavyweight class, one of the most disciplined guys in the history of time, wins the Olympic championship. His career comes to an end because he can no longer beat the scale. He lost that piece of discipline. And I don't know what happened with Khabib, but to hear that a guy's body shut down is a very hard thing to happen if he's on track, if he's meeting his 30-day marker, his 21-day marker, his 10-day marker. And I would be curious, did he get new advice? Did he take on somebody new? I can remember when I started working with Mike Dolce the first time, really working him. He and I were buddies, and he'd give me advice. But when he actually came out to the house, lived there, I didn't put anything into my body that he didn't hand me. I remember thinking, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. I'm never going to make weight, because he was feeding me so much food and my weight was so much higher on these markers. And he told me one week, you're going to lose 8 pounds this week. He had it down to a science. And the only way I could do what he was asking me to do was to just not get on the scale. And every single night when I went to bed, I knew I'm not going to make it. He's feeding me too much. I'm not hurting like I'm supposed to be hurting. I can feel my belly's full. There's too much food. And so that's what I did. I just did not get on the scale. I trusted. I got on the scale after 1 week. I had lost on the dot. And I have a digital scale. It'll tell you to the 10th. I lost on the dot 8 pounds. Just what he told me I would do. Pigging out.
I'm not buying it, and I'm never going to buy it.
It's unbelievable. It's very hard to believe.
No, I believe that. The sodium manipulation, this, that, and other, water loaded, and keep your digestive tract working nonstop, 24 hours a day. Listen, I watched you cut weight against Dan Miller. I think you were 18 or 19 over when we got there. And you cut it the old-fashioned way, okay? You cut it just the way that you said, oh, my God, that's the wrong way, and you had a great goddamn performance. I don't buy it. I'm never going to buy it. Listen, there needs to be a weight class between 155 and 170. There just does, okay? I don't think that's the case with Khabib. I think he got cut. He got caught. He mismanaged it. Listen, when you cut to Miller, anytime that you cut to 185, if I came to your room at 3:30 in the morning, I guarantee I could have talked you into going to the hospital.
Sure. Yeah, no, I hear your point on that. I've never been to the point where it's just hard for me to relate to, I guess. That's why I'm kind of staying out of it, and I don't want to weigh in. If you're dealing with a guy's health, and if you're dealing with a guy's health, as soon as the guy says, you're dealing with my health. Okay, as soon as a guy raises his hand and says, I can't do it anymore, the gig is up, you take him to the hospital, you rehydrate him, and you call the fight off. It just is hard for me to imagine ever doing that. No matter the discomfort, the pains, no matter what, it's hard for me to relate to that. You just get it done. You just make the weight. I've seen guys, I watched Ryan Henry's dad break out a buck knife at the junior nationals and start sawing off chunks of his hair to try to make weight. I've seen a guy go in and give blood because a pint of blood was 1.8 pounds to make weight. I've seen guys do these things. Those are horrific tales to some people, but I do come from the mindset of if you said you're going to make the weight and you signed a contract, you make the weight. So what happened in Khabib's situation, I really don't know, but for anybody that takes any pleasure in piling on the guy, they need to take a step back and just say, wait a minute, this guy paid. This guy paid his dues. He lost an opportunity. He lost $500,000, and he likely will never get that opportunity back. Now, with that said, Joel, if Tony Ferguson gets hurt, Khabib could be right back in. Here's what I want to speculate and tell you. Let's switch gears off of Khabib real fast, or off of him missing weight. Here's what I think's going to happen. This is an outside-the-box prediction, and if it comes true, I'm going to look like a smart guy, so I want to make it for that very reason. Here's your 4 players at 155 pounds right now. Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz, Khabib, and Tony. We as fans have been promised the Tony and Khabib fight. The UFC spent millions of dollars marketing that fight. I would like to see that fight preserved. There's another school of thought is, nope, the time came and went. Tony Ferguson by default moves on to Conor. Hold on just a second. We were promised Khabib and Tony. We were promised that'd be for the interim title, and a lot of money was spent on that fight. I'd like to see that fight stay together personally. Those guys are going to fight. Whether it's next or it's down the road when Khabib gets his weight up, they're going to fight. So I would like to see the marketing and the money and the enthusiasm that's already out there preserved, and I would like to see that fight rescheduled another date, which leaves you by default of players, Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz. Now, you and I are fans of rubber matches. We believe they should happen. That's because we're fans of the history of the sport. And we go back to boxing, not just our sport of MMA. We take our cues from boxing. Anytime guys have split, they go into a rubber match. For some reason, the rubber match with Nate and Conor was just kind of taken off the table. And I was always confused by that, going, well, wait just a second. There's plenty of excitement here. There's plenty of reason to redo that. Nate he got his victory in very decisive fashion. Conor came back, did what he needed to do, but before they raised Conor's hand, I didn't know whose hand they were going to raise. It was that close of a fight. Now you've got Conor with the title at 155. You got Nate sitting out there. You got the other 2 players, Khabib and Tony. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that we just move Tony into that spot. I think we make our word good with Tony, which is you're going to fight Khabib, you're going to fight him for the interim title. The fans get what they want. We just have to do it at a different date, which brings you Diaz-Conor. Now, the only way my prediction and what I laid out for you as a map there, the only way that becomes true, Joel, is if you can get Khabib and Tony together before Conor comes back. Because for this to work for Tony, to sell this to Tony and make him go, okay, everything has to be the same. He's got to get the same money, the same opponent, the same weight class, and the same opportunity, which is the interim title. So if Conor comes back before Khabib can fight Tony, now Khabib and Tony are no longer fighting for an interim title. So now the deal is different with Tony, and I think you get some pushback.